until we build up confidence in frontline healthcare workers, the deployment and the impact can't be felt. We've at Orcha really put a lot of heavy emphasis on supporting healthcare professionals. Because, you know, to your point, we're not trained in this stuff at all.
No.
And I do know some lecturing for undergraduate medics. They look at me like I've got three heads. They're like, "You talking what? Digital health?" They just don't have not even a tiny module on it. So
I know. I've been actually teaching GPs or trainees and as well as medical students here in Denmark about health apps mainly, but digital health in general. And I think I'm seeing a bit more interest the recent couple of years.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we did some research actually, and over 90% of healthcare professionals think that these technologies could help their patients' health if they knew which technologies to tell them to use.
Yeah. But I think it's not it's not I mean, we need to know these things because the patient will definitely find them somewhere else and maybe be harmed or even
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's the initial opportunity gap. So every day, 5 million people download a health app. Every day. Now, that's increased from 4 million pre-COVID to 5 million post. But only 20% of those technologies are even safe. So for those 5 million, most people are downloading something that isn't even safe, let alone clinically effective. And so the opportunity gap is just to help people know which ones are good, and then at least we're having an impact immediately on that opportunity. It's the equivalent of having every drug that's ever been made by anybody in the world out there in the supermarkets.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
But can you maybe, because I'm thinking a bit more about the iteration process and the changes that you can make in an algorithm, for example. So let's say I have an app or a software solution that's helping diagnose moles, for example. And the basis of this diagnostic tools is an AI algorithm, AI model, and when it's retrained all the times, how do you? So you say you only re-review the changes in the solution.
Yes, I mean,
so what's if the changes are in the fundamental
continuous? Yeah. So there's a few things. The first thing to say is the standards in the space for AI are emerging. So what good looks like is still up for debate. So we've been doing quite a lot of work on establishing what do we mean by good and what do we mean by safe and what do we mean by evidence-based for AI, because it's not the same, as you say, as other software. It's a bit like pre-software. We assessed hardware medical devices, and then we move into software and like, oh, this is different, and then AI is different again. The other thing to mention is not all AI is the same. And people sometimes say that their technology has AI in, and it doesn't really. So there's different levels of risk in AI. So some people might have a chatbot, and other people might have something, again, that they say is AI and it's not really. So there's some complexity in this. So what we've done is we've created question sets that allow us to, first of all, differentiate the different types of AI that we're talking about and understand, first of all, the different levels of risk associated with the AI that technology has within it. The next thing is then what we don't do is we don't duplicate the effort of somebody else. So if a technology is, say, achieved a CE certification through the Medical Device Directive, and that's what was required from a clinical safety perspective, and it's gone through years of testing, we're not reassessing what the Medical Device Agency has done. We're checking that the technology has that. Equally, from an evidence-based perspective, we're not running the clinical trial. We're saying if this technology has met a threshold of risk and therefore requires an RCT or a clinical trial, then we're looking at the clinical trial and assessing the robustness of that clinical trial, the sample size, etc. So it is complex and it's an emerging area when it comes to AI. So I know, for example, here in the NHS, they've done quite a lot of work around what good looks like and the standards, but the standard is not necessarily the assessment process, which is one level of granularity beneath it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it is, as you say, an emerging field, and it is extremely difficult with these changing. We're not used to changing. So comparing it to pharma products, it doesn't change.
Or an X-ray,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
a CT scanner.
Yeah.
These technologies, you go through a process, and then that's it. It stays the same. It's not like that in the world of digital health. So we can't assess them in the same way we've always assessed other things.
And another thing you said is also really interesting is that what level of evidence are we looking for? When is it enough, and how high on the hierarchy do we have to go before I can prescribe it or recommend it to my patients?
Exactly, and it depends on the risk of the technology.
Yeah.
So, one of the things again, and it's the same, proportionality is really important in all areas of assessment for technology. So, just by way of example, data privacy. If a technology isn't holding data, storing data, pushing data, it could be a digital leaflet. The risk of that technology is completely different to, say, a MySkin product, which is a diagnostic. So we have to assess the risk profile before we then assess the compliance and the evidence of a technology. So it's a proportionate, which is why it also becomes complicated, because a list of criteria doesn't really work, because not all of that criteria would necessarily be relevant.